strength of self-control. To let others smite your cheek a second time is not advised to develop you into a mental or moral weakling, but to instill in you a greater strength of self-control gained by overcoming the impulse of acting under the influence of the spirit of revenge. It is easy to slap back when anybody hits you, but it requires a greater mental strength not to strike back. Practical sympathy. And he that takes away your overcoat, do not prevent him from taking your coat also. This may seem like very impractical advice in the modern world. The meaning is that a spiritual man of high order feels no loss when he parts with his overcoat for someone in need, or when he is asked to part with his coat after parting with his overcoat. The spiritual man who sees God not only in his own body but in the bodies of the poor and afflicted finds equal enjoyment when he takes off his overcoat and coat from his one body and puts them on another one of his bodies. The spiritual man who is one with God sees himself as the self of all, sees himself in his own body as well as in the bodies of others. When such a divine person takes off his own coat and overcoat from his one body and gives them for the use of another body in whom he sees God, he feels by this action that he has not lost anything but that he has done this for himself, only in another body, just as one transfers a ring from one finger to another. In giving the overcoat and coat, one must use discrimination. But to give your own things to those that need those things more than you do, is good. You must learn to clothe other bodies as you do your own, with equal pleasure, that you may know that yourself is present in the bodies of others. Practical sympathy dispels the darkness of separation and is the light by which you can see all hearts tied with one golden cord of divine love. And that God throbs in all hearts, suffering in the afflicted, rejoicing in those that are whole. Build your house of consciousness on the rock of immortality. And he spake a parable unto them, Can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch? The disciple is not above his master, but every one that is perfect shall be as his master. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but perceivest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Luke 6:39-41. Those that are physically and mentally or spiritually blind, if they try to lead others who are like them, all will fall into the same ditch of physical, or mental, or spiritual suffering. The disciple who has studied for some time with a master does not all at once become like the master. A master is he who has perfectly acquired the art of contacting God. When a disciple can also completely contact God, he becomes like the master. But an advanced disciple just the same always gives respect to his master who has been the portal to freedom and a messenger of God. Jesus honored John the Baptist as the guru of his past incarnations even though Jesus had become more advanced than John the Baptist. Know thyself. It is unprofitable act for a man to go on beholding the defects or blindness of spiritual vision of others when he himself is spiritually blind. It is a waste of time to uselessly spend his time measuring the spiritual defects of others when he could very well profitably spend it in correcting his own faults. Those that spend their time criticizing others have no time for criticizing their own faults. This mistake is indulged in by people of all walks of life. There are some people who are angry themselves but cannot stand anger in others. Some people are greedy themselves but cannot stand greed in others. Some people gossip about others but cannot stand being gossiped about. Some people have very bad social manners yet they never recognize that fact in themselves. Some people criticize others about certain faults which they themselves possess plentifully. So it is a psychological and metaphysical error to spend our time in pointing out the mental dirt in other souls when we ought to spend our time in cleaning out the inner dirt residing within the mansion of our own soul. How can we say to our brother, I know the art of pulling out ignorance from your soul, when we have not pulled out our own ignorance? Dispelling ignorance is not an easy job. It requires practical experience and practical living of the life. If we are not a jeweler, how can we teach others to distinguish between good and bad jewels or detect imitation jewels mixed up with good jewels? So, if we are not a divine jeweler, how can we teach others to distinguish between ignorance and wisdom? To pull out ignorance from others' souls presupposes that we have pulled ignorance out from our soul first. Avoid hypocrisy. Therefore we are a hypocrite, insincere in our actions, if with our vision befogged by ignorance, we try with that blurred inner vision to heal others suffering from inner blindness. Whenever we think that we are not progressing spiritually and that we are wasting time meditating, then reflect that by being able to sleep we forget all the dualities and miseries of physical existence. Indeed, the whole world vanishes into the invisible vastness, so if we could produce conscious ecstasy and samadhi at will, we will be able at the time of misery and death to be conscious of the vast kingdom of bliss which remains locked up hidden behind our state of wakefulness and subconscious state, even as the all-misery-quelling sleep remains hidden behind our conscious mind. We have learned to sleep but have not learned to be in ecstasy, which is far more enjoyable than sleep, and which can constantly show us that matter is the frozen imagination of God, as sleep shows us that dreams and nightmares are our own frozen imagination. A dreaming person can never know that a nightmare is a nightmare unless he wakes up. So also, unless we wake up in the land of ecstasy and become one with God and awake in God, we cannot realize that this universe is a frozen imagination of God or the dream of God, which can be dispersed only by our awakening in spirit and by samadhi. When we are engrossed in watching a tragedy scene in a motion picture, we almost begin to feel the reality of the picture, and the seemingly real material nature of the motion picture becomes strong upon our consciousness. But suddenly, when we are troubled by a particular scene of cruelty in the motion picture or a catastrophe like the burning of a city, if we look up suddenly from the picture to the beam falling upon the screen, and if we closely watch the figures in motion on the screen, we realize that all the solids, liquids, human beings and misery are nothing but the different vibrations of the electric current, and that all the human beings, scenes and material things in this picture are nothing but different manifestations of electric current. Seeing God dreaming this cosmic dream. Likewise, the materially engrossed individual beholds rain, sunshine, property, change of weather, birth, death, marriage as material facts. But when this individual wakes up into the consciousness of God through constant ecstasy or union with God, then he begins to see a light trembling in all matter. He sees that all matter with solids, liquids, gaseous substances, with human life and thought, is nothing but the different vibrations of that all-pervading, quivering light of God. By further development one can actually see God dreaming this cosmic dream. In a motion picture house while the picture is playing, one person can concentrate on the beam falling on the screen and another might concentrate on the pictures on the screen. These two individuals of course would have two different experiences. The man concentrating on the beam which causes the materialization of the pictures on the screen would see only a beam of light without any pictures, and the man concentrating on the pictures would see the pictures without the sight of the pictureless beam. Likewise, a person concentrating on matter will see only material objects, and a person concentrating on God's light would see God. And a man sitting in the motion picture house can once in a while look at the pictureless beam falling on the screen as well as the pictures on the screen. So likewise, the man who has highest nirvikalpa samadhi can see the great light of cosmic energy which is coming from God and falling on the vast space, creating the pictures of planetary stellar universes as well as the motion picture of this universe. Such a divine man and advanced individual can see the pictureless cosmic energy as well as the motion picture of the universe emanating from it. For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by his own fruit. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor of a bramble bush gather they grapes. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil, for out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. Luke 6:43-45. The physical nervous system. A human being is composed of three kinds of trees: the physical nervous system with its roots in the brain and the trunk in the spine, the cerebrospinal axis, afferent nerves branching out from it as the branches, and the senses and sensations at the end of the nerve branches as the fruits. This human tree of nerves yields good or bad sensations according to the nature of the individual who owns this tree of nervous system. When an individual administers the water of poisonous thoughts at the root of this tree of life in the brain, he produces fruits of evil sensations hanging from the branches of different nerves. That is, when a person feeds his brain with evil thoughts, those thoughts create desire for evil sensations, and the end of the optical branch nerves or the auditory branch nervous system becomes laden with fruits of evil sensations in the form of desires to listen to words of flattery or words of evil. Likewise the tactual and olfactory and gustatory nerves are laden with the fruits of sensual desire and sensations of greed. That is why it must be remembered that a brain that is fed with good thoughts creates a good tree of life with good habits and cravings for good sensations. Every tree of life has its roots in the soil of cosmic consciousness, and as such the human nervous system was originally made to attract and enjoy good sensations. But man, through his freedom of will, has converted this tree of life into a bearer of fruits of evil sensations. Once a nervous system is changed so that it produces for evil sensations, it is very hard to change it. For the good nervous system will not produce fruits of desire for evil sensations, nor an evil tree of life produce the fruits in the form of desires for good sensations. Besides this physical tree of life, man is fitted with two other trees: the astral tree of life and the tree of consciousness. The astral tree of life with the astral powers. The astral tree of life has its roots as the thousand-petaled rays in the brain. The Sushumna cerebral current is the trunk of this tree of life, and the fine currents branched out through the nervous system are the astral branches. This astral tree of life, being fed by cosmic energy, usually produces fruits of fine inner perception which the advanced devotee can pluck and enjoy. As a person cannot enjoy the fruits of a mango tree hidden in a garden, so a person or a devotee who has not seen this astral tree of life with the light of ecstasy cannot possibly enjoy its fruits of fine perceptions. Some of the fruits of this astral tree of life consist in possession of miraculous powers of seeing visions which are true to life, and of listening to sounds beyond the reach of human ears, of feeling touch sensations of the bodies of others, of smelling astral fragrance, of astral taste, of possessing the power to dislodge the astral body from the physical body, of lengthening or shortening the astral body. Behind this tree of astral life is the tree of consciousness. Tree of consciousness. The ordinary tree of consciousness has its roots in the intelligence in the brain. Its trunk consists of the mind, and its branches consist of reason, will and feeling. It bears fruits of evil and good desires. When one feeds this tree of consciousness with the water of intuition springing from the foundation of meditation, then this tree of consciousness becomes entirely a good tree bearing only fruits of good desires. Hidden beneath these three trees of the physical nervous system, of astral life, and of consciousness, is the tree of superconsciousness. Tree of superconsciousness. The tree of superconsciousness has its roots in cosmic consciousness. Its trunk consists of superconsciousness and its branches consist of superconscious perception, subconscious perception and conscious perception. This tree of superconsciousness when perceived will be found to bear fruits of superconscious intuition and of subconscious spiritual dreams and fruits of good sensations. God can be spoken of as the root and the cosmic energy can be spoken of as the trunk, and all rays shooting out of this cosmic energy for the creation of universes can be called the branches. The worlds and universes of astral and physical constitution can be spoken of as the fruits of the tree of cosmic consciousness. God originally planned that this tree of cosmic consciousness should only bear fruits of good vibrations, but Satan put some poison sap of his evil desires in this tree of cosmic energy. That is why we find collisions, earthquakes, dissolutions of planetary systems, and so forth. Speech is our index. When Jesus said, "Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh," he meant that speech is the index to the contents of the heart. The vibrations of an individual's speech, no matter how dressed up with polished language, contains the vibration of his inner tendencies buried in the heart. Hence, in the tone and vibration of a man's voice we find the echo of his heart experiences. A bad man may imitate the voice of a good man, but his evil heart will certainly vibrate in his pretending voice. So, we must remember that the vibrations of our heart reverberate in the vibration of the voice. Through the tone of the voice of an individual and its vibrating mildness or harshness we can recognize the nature of his hidden heart. The whole history of an individual as to how he lives his life within himself and his family is revealed in his voice. Also the postnatal and prenatal story of one's life is written in the eyes of an individual. Those that cannot detect others' lives through their eyes can, by the perception of calmness, detect the evil or good hidden in the nature of an individual's voice. And why call ye me, Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Whosoever cometh to me, and heareth my sayings, and doeth them, I will show you to whom he is like a man which built a house, and digged deep, and laid the foundation on a rock. And when the flood arose, the stream beat vehemently upon the house, and could not shake it, for it was founded upon a rock. But he that heareth and doeth not, is like a man that without a foundation built an house upon the earth, against which the stream did beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. Luke 6:46-49. Jesus spoke, "And why call ye me Christ Intelligence, the Lord of all creation, without knowing how I manifest myself in creation and in your consciousness? Because you call me Christ but do not feel my presence in your consciousness, is why you do not lead your life as I say unto you or as my consciousness signifies by its Christ vibrations beneath your superconsciousness. When you will be able to feel my Christ consciousness by awakening your superconsciousness, then you will do the things which I signify through your inner perception, but not before. House of Consciousness. Whosoever, forsaking the slums of matter and sensations, cometh to me hidden in the temple of superconsciousness, can listen to the silent vibrations of my inner being, and accordingly his nervous system automatically acts according to the perceptions of the inner divine impulses. He is a soul who builds his house of consciousness not on the foundations of passing pleasures but who digs deep with the pickaxe of meditation and God to the unshakable rock of intuitive knowledge, building his house of bliss on the everlasting rock of cosmic consciousness. And when the flood of ignorance comes in life or in the after-death state in all its vehemence and impetuosity, the house of cosmic perception and intuitive understanding built on the rock of God consciousness is unshaken. That soul who overcomes material desires and has built his house of cosmic consciousness, will not be carried away by the flood of reincarnation producing desires. The soul who has built his consciousness on the rock of God consciousness shall not lose his consciousness in death or life, but will forever be housed in immortality. But that devotee who hears the voice of his inner consciousness and inner perception but does not act according to those inner impulses is a man who has built his consciousness on the foundations of earthly habits. When temptations will come to him, his house of self-control will break and he will be swept away by the tide of ignorance, and his temporary house of spiritual discipline will be devastated. No miracles can be performed without God consciousness, hence the foolishness of egotism. Now when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples, and said unto them, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? Jesus answered and said unto them, Go and show John again those things which ye do hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he, whosoever shall not be offended in me. Matthew 11:2-6, Jesus says, Go back and tell John Baptist of all you have seen and heard about the demonstrations of God through me, how the physically and spiritually blind receive physical or spiritual inner sight, and the lame walk, physical, moral and spiritual lepers are healed and cleansed by wisdom, the physically deaf get back their hearing, the spiritually deaf hear the voice of wisdom, the physically dead are made alive again through cosmic energy. The spiritually dead are renovated by wisdom and spiritual baptism, and the poor in spirit receive the living contact of God wisdom and God vibration. Gospel signifies God's spell or God's vibration. God never speaks to anyone except his devotees. Of course he can speak through a human form to the devotee, but he usually speaks through intelligent vibrations appearing as sounds in the ether, or God vibrates his wisdom through the intuition of the devotee. Jesus speaks of his message vibrating with God consciousness. No one can preach God vibrating truth unless he feels it within himself. Ordinary spiritual teachers preach and speak about truth through book learning, but masters like Jesus speak of the truth which they feel within their consciousness. Not my own glory. And blessed is he who does not find fault with me by accusing me of egotism that I perform miracles to extol my own glory. Blessed is he who instead will appreciate the demonstrations of spiritual miracles which I perform through the sanction and will of God to bring other deluded souls unto him. Miracles performed by semi-developed souls might delude them, as they begin to be spoiled by the laudation of admirers, forgetting to give the glory and the praise to God alone. No miracles can be performed without God consciousness, so it's foolish to seek self-laudation. The devotee in the course of his higher spiritual development receives the gift of miracles, but to use miracles without the sanction of God is sin and involves spiritual degradation. Jesus realized that usually the display of miracles might be a divine offense, but whosoever recognized that he was performing miracles to declare the glory of God was blessed, for he would receive divine realization. John the Baptist. And as they departed, Jesus began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, What went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind? But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. But what went ye out for to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and more than a prophet. For this is he, of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Matthew 11:7-10. Jesus asked the people, many of whom were followers of John and visited him in the wilderness, What went you out into the wilderness to seek? Not a man clothed with soft gorgeous silk garments, but John the Baptist dressed only in skins. But he is a divine reed vibrating with the wind of God. Surely you did not go to seek a gorgeously dressed man of political authority who could be found in a king's court, but you went to see in the wilderness a man of greater spiritual authority than those in earthly courts of kings. Yea, you went to see a prophet who declares God. But he is greater than an ordinary prophet, for he is a special prophet ordained to be my preceptor in a former incarnation, and also to perform a great part in the divine plan, in that he was to come on earth at this time to declare the Son of God in me. That is why Jesus quotes from the Scriptures. Behold, I, God, send my messenger, John the Baptist, before thy face, in advance of thee, which shall prepare thy way before thee, and it is ordained that my divine messenger John shall make the minds of the people recognize the Christ in thee, O my Son Jesus. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord, whom ye seek, shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. Mark 1-2 and Malachi 3-1. Even though God has given independence of all creation, yet in this Satan-disordered cosmos God has certain plans to work out to defeat the influence of Satan and re-establish his kingdom. Prophets from time to time declare the will of God, hence Jesus quotes that it was ordained by God long before, as expressed in the Scriptures, that John the Baptist was to declare Jesus Christ. The Guru Preceptor was to introduce his disciple Jesus to the world. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women there hath not risen a greater prophet than John the Baptist, notwithstanding he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist until now the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if ye will receive it, this is Elias which was for to come. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Matthew 11:11-15. Verily I say unto you all that among those that are born of flesh there have been none greater than John the Baptist, for he has been selected to baptize Christ Jesus, reformer of world's cycle. Jesus was again and again emphasizing the greatness of John the Baptist and all that he had been in a previous incarnation, as Elijah, and all that he was to perform in connection with him, Jesus. The least in heaven. Nevertheless, anyone who has attained final emancipation in the last possible way, in the least possible way in the kingdom of heaven, is greater than John the Baptist. Jesus here is distinguishing between John the Baptist's self-realization in earth life and the self-realization of even the least individual soul who is finally liberated in the kingdom of God. And from the time preceding John the Baptist until now, or until this present time and all future times, the kingdom of God suffereth violence, allows itself to be seized by violent will and determination. Jesus says with the great yogi Patanjali that the violently determined devotees get salvation and the heavenly blissful state by throwing their vision, life force and concentration on God. And the violent take it by force signifies that a soul who deeply, intensely and continuously meditates, being guided by a proper yogi preceptor, knows how to quickly and forcefully release his life from the body and allow it to join the cosmic energy present in all space. This releases the soul from the bodily prison and unites it with its cosmic home in all space. Patanjali specially emphasizes that those that are very eager to know God and meditate deeply, quickly unite with Spirit. The above law that the heavenly kingdom can be attained quickly by spiritually eager people is manifested in the life of John the Baptist, who seized the kingdom of God by the violence of his will. Old Testament prophets. The Old Testament prophets saw seers who revealed the will of God, and the law that is, the plan of God as worked out in creation and revealed through the Scriptures. prophesied about spiritual happenings until some of that prophecy was actually fulfilled in the life of John the Baptist, who was to be seen on earth according to divine plans, and as that plan had been foretold by the prophets. Then Jesus speaks and explains how John the Baptist's life was no fortuitous happening, but occasioned according to divine plan. Then Jesus says all those that have power of vision to receive and understand the truth about the prophecy of John the Baptist's coming, let them realize that he is none other than Elias, Elijah, of a former incarnation. Jesus here definitely points out that reincarnation alone explains how souls are taken by death and leave the shores of life without attaining salvation, can again strive and attain final emancipation through many human incarnations. Reincarnation means that when a soul leaves a body in an undeveloped state, it must come back into another body in earth life to finish its spiritual development and regain the consciousness of its lost identity with God. Jesus clearly points out that the soul of Elias had entered the body of John the Baptist because it had not reached final emancipation and because it had to perform certain activities according to the divine plan in connection with the life of Jesus. He that hath spiritual ears to hear and feel the vibration of truth, let them hear or realize the truth behind my words. Spiritual hearing. Most of the people who heard Jesus justified the action of God because they were baptized or spiritually prepared by John the Baptist. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the advice of God coming through Jesus, even though this counsel was given for their own good, because they were not baptized or prepared by John. But whereunto then shall I liken this generation? It is like unto children sitting in the markets, and calling unto their fellows, and saying, We have piped unto you, and ye have not danced, we have mourned unto you, and ye have not lamented. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, He hath a devil. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, Behold a man gluttonous, and a wine-bibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of her children. Matthew 11:16-19. Jesus said the men of this generation are like ignorant children who sit idly in a marketplace, neither buying anything nor busy with joyous play, nor repenting for whiling away the time uselessly. What Jesus meant is this, that the world is a marketplace where people buy with their labors material or spiritual things. But most people are ignorant and foolish like children who come on earth and are too lazy to exhort one another to be engrossed about worthwhile things. Such people always accuse one another for their faults in not being progressive, saying, We played the flute but you didn't dance. Such ignorant people, instead of being busy with spiritual things, while away their time in physical and mental laziness. Some casually mourn for whiling away life's valuable time uselessly, while others never shed a tear for fruitlessly idling away their life. Jesus meant that in this marketplace of earth, where true devotees are busy marketing spiritual qualities, some casually revel in spiritual things, while some do not rejoice in spiritual culture at all. Some mourn for not finding the truth and some never weep for not finding truth. He also signified that this earth is full of people who pass the time in accusing one another for not being spiritually progressive. That is why the Pharisees pass their time in inner idleness and indifference, accusing one another about their faults of wasting time. Being thus engrossed in foolishness, they act like ignorant children and fail to take advantage of the good brought to them by God through Jesus Christ. Life's marketplace. Jesus went on to say, Ye Pharisees and lawyers who are busy whiling away your time in the marketplace of earth where you could find God, you are ignorant, indifferent, blind and mentally scattered so that you could not recognize the spiritual greatness of John the Baptist and the good which he could do unto you. Ye foolish people, you think he is possessed of a devil, even though he is outwardly self-controlled enough not to even eat bread or drink wine. If you can think of one who is outwardly self-controlled as being possessed of a devil, then how could you recognize the Son of God hidden behind the Son of Man or human nature which outwardly eats and drinks? Ye think of me as a greedy man, a wine taster, and one who associates with publicans and sinners. Ye know not that all children of wisdom like me, whatever they do, even though outwardly not understood, are justified by the subtle and immutable laws of true inner wisdom. Jesus emphasized in his above saying that John, though he was far advanced, still was in a state of spiritual self-discipline where he had to fast and follow certain laws of physical actions, whereas he, Jesus, even though he took bread and wine, was far ahead of John the Baptist and had so attained God consciousness that eating bread and drinking wine according to custom had no connection except with his physical nature, Son of Man, and did not touch his spiritual nature as manifested in him as the Son of God. Self-discipline. Jesus implied that John the Baptist was body conscious, so he had to follow physical discipline in spite of his inner spiritually, whereas the Son of God in Christ was completely detached from the actions of the Son of Man, Jesus. Jesus signified that the Pharisees and lawyers were so spiritually blind that if they could not recognize the spirituality of the outwardly disciplined John the Baptist, how could they recognize Jesus' great spirituality hidden behind the apparently unmodified and ordinary life of the olden times? Jesus did not condemn the self-discipline of John the Baptist, nor did he sanction eating and drinking without being guided by wisdom, but he only said that the spiritually blind can neither recognize the goodness of man even when he is outwardly good, nor can they recognize the deep spiritually hidden behind a simple life. Guided by wisdom. Jesus also supported his actions as being guided by wisdom. That is, whatever he was doing was guided by true intuitive wisdom only. Jesus ate and drank to be sociable to publicans and sinners and to make them feel he was one with them. By doing so, Jesus could closely associate with the sinners or error makers who needed him and whom he could help because of their confidence in him as being one of them. If Jesus took up a belligerent attitude denouncing all social activities, he would have been shunned by all, and it would have been impossible for him to do good to all. Jesus knew that his eating or drinking would not harm him or anyone, and that the closeness of his magnetic personality with the sinners would redeem them from their errors. Jesus knew that his eating or drinking was not important, but it was a paramount necessity for him to associate with sinners by apparently becoming one of them and sympathizing with them. Then began he to upbraid the cities wherein more of his mighty works were done, because they repented not. Woe unto thee, Chorazin! Woe unto thee, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works, which were done in you, had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the day of judgment, than for you. And thou, Capernaum, which are exalted unto heaven, shall be brought down to hell. For if the mighty works, which have been done in thee, had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I say unto you, that it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment, than for thee. Matthew 11:20-24. O ye inhabitants of Chorazin and Bethsaida, you have seen the mighty works of God's hidden power, but you have not profited enough to change your ways, even though you witnessed spiritual demonstrations and saw what they could do to you. Your unreceptive mental attitude will ultimately lead you to follow the paths of evil and fall into its pits of misery. Even the people of ancient Tyre and Sidon would have been more receptive if they had witnessed such divine demonstrations. They would have deeply repented their evil ways by going through penance of wearing sackcloth and putting on ashes. I prophesy unto you that when I will leave this body and am in my Christ consciousness, I shall joyously watch the souls of the dead inhabitants of Tyre and Sidon lifted to a higher region of vibratory existence. What is the day of judgment? The day of judgment is not fixed by the gods at certain period, but it consists usually of the period after death, when disembodied souls receive the judgment or fruits of actions according to the accumulated actions of their previous lives. The day of judgment, therefore, is a time after death when souls, according to their individual karmas, receive judgment according to the cosmic law as to what kind of rebirth or spiritual promotion they should have on earth or another higher sphere of existence. And that is why I know and can foretell to you, O inhabitants of Chorazin and Bethsaida, that because of your spiritual indifference you will reap evil fruits on the day of judgment of your karmas after death. For even the inhabitants of Tyre and Sidon, due to their less wicked ways of living, on the day of judgment of their karmas will reap better results. My consciousness, which is omniscient, perpetual and uninterrupted by death, now sees all that will happen in the future to you all. I prophesy that I surely shall grieve on your day of judgment for your folly, O ye inhabitants of Chorazin and Bethsaida. Jesus speaks concerning Capernaum, his stated abode during his public life, thus the most favored city, as to how she will suffer in the future, and also says that its inhabitants are very blind and unappreciative of the spiritual demonstrations they had seen. He says that if the inhabitants of Sodom had seen such demonstrations, they would have a better state now and hereafter than Capernaum, who was exalted unto heaven by being the scene of many of Christ's miracles, but who failed to appreciate her honor. What is sin? How may it be forgiven? Is it possible for anyone to forgive the sins of another? And Jesus answering said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And he saith, Master, say on. There was a certain creditor which had two debtors, the one owed 500 pence, and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him most? Simon answered and said, I suppose that he, to whom he forgave most. And he said unto him, Thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman, and said unto Simon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thine house, thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she hath washed my feet with tears, and wiped them with the hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman since the time I came in hath not ceased to kiss me feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but this woman hath anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. Luke 7:40-47. Every action of an individual, whether good or bad, is governed by the law of karma or the law of cause and effect. Good actions produce good results. Evil actions produce evil effects. Any evil action against society is called crime. Any evil action against the welfare of the soul is called a sin. When a criminal breaks a city ordinance, he is condemned according to the laws of the city. But the governor of the state, who has power over all the laws, may forgive him. Likewise, the law of karma which governed the life of this sinful woman and all individuals is inscrutable in its ways and operation. But God, being all-powerful, and his saints who are tuned with him, being also very spiritually powerful, have the strength, by the exercise of will force, to stop the fruition of evil karma in any individual. Forgiving sins. Only God and sons of God can completely or partially forgive the sins of an individual against his soul, provided that he is very devoted and seeks forgiveness, not through supplication but through divine love. Each soul, being made in the image of God, can never essentially change no matter how apparently sinful. Sin only acts like a crust which prevents the pure soul from meeting the pure spirit. When that crust of sin is broken, the soul mingles with spirit. When a quart of sea water is sealed in a bottle and placed in the sea, the bottle keeps the water from mixing with the ocean of sea water. When the bottle is broken, the sea water in the bottle becomes one with the ocean. Similarly, souls are bottled up in sin and thus prevented from contacting the omnipresent Spirit. When the bottle of sin is broken, the soul is released and becomes one with the Spirit. Each soul is a potential child of God and has in him the full divine love. When a soul becomes sinful or follows the path of ignorance, he turns away from God. When a soul concentrates too much on sense happiness, it is sinful. That is, it forgets to find the superior happiness of ever-new bliss present in the soul and which can be tasted in meditation. One who loves sensual pleasures more than the blissful contact of meditation is a sinner against his true happiness. No matter how intense such souls have been in following material happiness, when their minds turn within and sincerely seek and finally attain happiness by meditation, they do not have to partially or completely go through the suffering linked to their previous sense attachment. Meaning of sinner. Every soul, being made in the image of God, is a child of God and as such is all-powerful. Hence, when a child of God chooses to be identified with the senses or to act against his true happiness, then he is a sinner, that is, a violator of his true divine happiness. But if this sinful soul realizes that he, through dream delusion, temporarily imagined himself to be a sinner but in reality is the Son of God, then he feels that overwhelming faith that he is not a sinner but a true child of God. When this faith in his true inner self arises, then he forgets his imagination about being a sinful person and realizes that he is the true Son of God. This conviction of being a sinner is imaginary and changeable in a soul. But the latent conviction that a soul is a son of God is unchangeable and permanent even though temporarily hidden under the covering of sin. So, every soul who has faith in and love for the divinity of his soul and the all-powerful nature of God finds quick freedom from the results of all evil actions done in the past. If a room is dark for 1,000 years, the darkness cannot be driven away by beating it with a stick. But if a light is brought in, 1,000 years of darkness is dispelled at once. Similarly, when a soul is in the darkness of ignorance and full of evil actions for incarnations, nevertheless, when the light of wisdom and faith in soul and God is lighted, then all the darkness resulting from the accumulated seeds of evil actions of incarnations is dispelled at once. This sinful woman whom Jesus forgave was a potential God. In spite of her many sins, she realized the potential power of God within herself and the power of Jesus which could awaken within her the God consciousness which would release her from the necessity of reaping the results of her past actions. This is what is meant by the forgiving of sins. Spiritual doctor. A blind man cannot lead the blind. A sinner cannot forgive another sinner. A sinful priest cannot forgive the sins of a sinful church member. Confession to a priest who himself needs confession does no good. Confession to a real spiritual priest is good. A spiritual priest is a spiritual doctor who can diagnose the psychological defects of a confessing church member and prescribe for him the spiritual remedy. Every individual sinning against his own happiness must seek the advice of a spiritual teacher and learn the ways by which he can be free from reaping the results of his sinful actions. Ordinary priests cannot forgive the sins of their disciples. Only extraordinary souls can do so. Great masters are known to take the results of others' sin in their own bodies. Jesus was crucified because he absorbed the sin of his disciples and many people within his own body. So the crucifixion of Jesus was also governed by the law of cause and effect. But even though the body of Jesus was crucified, his soul became free to unite with God. By crucifixion Jesus was able to work out the sins of the results of evil actions of his disciples and many souls in his own body, and thereby offered his disciples and many others the prize of spiritual freedom. Ordinary spiritual doctors or priests cannot forgive or free the sinful people coming to them for advice except by offering them only a spiritual prescription. Priests, if they have actual God contact, may develop the power not only to give spiritual advice to sinners but also to impregnate them with spiritual power by which they can be free from the results of their evil actions. All good and evil actions are impinged in the brain cells and are left as evil habits in the mind. A person suffering from evil habits and evil-saturated brain cells can free himself by learning methods of meditation from spiritual teachers and practicing them regularly until his evil habit is transformed by good habits of calmness and peace, and his evil-saturated brain cells are cauterized by divine energy and charged into good saturated brain cells. Impregnate with power. Brain cells saturated with evil thoughts are cauterized by the relaxed life force accumulating in the brain. A body-identified physical individual keeps his life force continuously identified with his muscles and senses, but a spiritual, meditative man keeps his muscles and body relaxed and his mind away from the senses so that the life force is relaxed from the sensory motor nerves and is accumulated in the brain. That is why meditation is the best way of changing the brain cells and uprooting habits from the mind. Cauterize brain cells. A divine soul like Jesus has the power by will force to charge the brain with cosmic energy which cauterizes all the evils saturated in the mind. The woman who was forgiven of many sins through her faith, relaxed her mind from her senses and went within. When Jesus found that this sinful woman was willing to quit her identification with the senses and concentrate on the brain, he stimulated the life energy gathered there with this cosmic energy and cauterized her brain cells, burning all the seeds and tendencies of sin saturated there. So, ordinary spiritual teachers should not think it is easy to forgive the sins of their disciples. A spiritual teacher who can relax his mind from the senses and gather his energy in the brain and cauterize his brain cells through such repeated actions can show others how to do likewise. When he develops very far, by an act of will he can send the energy in the receptive and relaxed souls and heal their brain of evil habits. Any individual, being made in the image of God, is potential divinity. But when a soul, made in the image of God, is identified with his body and sense pleasures, it forgets its own divine nature. Therefore it acts against its own interest and it sins against itself. If a prince squanders all his money on his wicked, pleasure-mad friends, wining and dining them, then he sins against his own interest. Likewise, when a princely soul caters to the temporary pleasures of the body, it forgets to concentrate on the everlasting ever-new bliss hidden within it. Freed by love. God is love. Every soul, deluded or in a wicked state, is made in the image of the love of God. No matter how deeply an error-stricken soul is identified with its physical pleasures, when by meditation it greatly feels the love of God within itself, then it begins to rise above all its bad habits of being identified with sinful sense pleasures. This is what happened to this woman who loved much. The sinful woman felt the love of God greatly within herself and therefore her sins were forgiven. That is, with her own consciousness and with the help of Jesus Christ, her consciousness became free from the habits of sin or being identified with sense pleasures. It must be strictly remembered again that only God and the great saints who understand and know the exact relation of mind, habits and the brain of individuals can change the nature of their brain cells and mind and thus can forgive them or free them from suffering the results of their own evil actions. If a person drinks virulent poison and then confesses about his sin of desiring to commit suicide to an ordinary priest, the latter cannot forgive the poisoned individual from suffering the results of his sinful act against the body and thus avoid death. If a priest cannot forgive individuals from the sins or results of bodily poisoning, how can he forgive them from the results of their mental, moral and spiritual sins? Some credulous sinners think that by confessing their sins to an ordinary priest they receive divine amnesty and freedom from suffering the results of their evil deeds. Because by confession they receive a sort of mental consolation, and because they cannot see the subtle operation of the law of karma, cause and effect, governing all actions, they think they are forgiven. Cosmic and human law. The operation of cosmic law in regard to human actions is different from the operation of human law. A criminal, when detected and if properly convicted, is quickly punished by the human law, but if undetected, he is able to go free. The cosmic law does not consciously punish any individual. Every individual rewards or punishes himself inasmuch as he is in tune with the cosmic law or acts against it. If a man hits his knuckles against an iron wall, he is hurt not only because of the desire of the iron wall to hurt him, but because he was foolish enough to strike the iron wall. Man is born in the image of God, and the cosmic laws of harmony govern his life. But when he uses his free will to act against the harmony of his own being, he causes suffering unto himself. When he is in tune with the inner harmony in the soul, he rewards himself with happiness. God never punishes individuals or rewards them. They punish or reward themselves, according to the results of their evil or good actions respectively. When a man works evil, there is no conscious force in the world ready to pounce upon him and destroy him. But the seeds of his evil actions remain lodged in the brain, ready to attract more evil and germinate on the soil of a favorable evil experience. Evil actions leave evil tendencies. Evil tendencies grow into evil habits, and evil habits result in evil actions. This is the way a sinner punishes himself. His own tendencies go on hounding him until he becomes desperate to do more and more evil without cessation. Eternal damnation. This cycle of evil is what is meant by eternal damnation. That is, a soul does evil over and over against his own desire. A person suffering from the results of bad habits feels so helpless that he fears he has to eternally go on through many incarnations reaping the results of evil actions. However, eternal damnation does not mean that a soul has to eternally suffer from the results of evil actions. It is only that a deep sinner helplessly goes on reaping the results of his actions so that he feels he is eternally condemned to be under the influence and in the tentacles of his evil habits. The inveterate smoker, the drunkard, the opium addict, the palate slave, the sex addict, the servants of anger, jealously, all feel that they are eternally damned because they act evilly against their desire to be good. However, there is no evil habit, however strong, that cannot be broken by good company, meditation and continuous effort to adopt the antidote of a good habit to counteract the evil habit. Those that have evil habits forget that the habit was performed after a long period of time and several initiations of continuous evil actions. Likewise, when an evil habit is already formed, it automatically takes away an individual's freedom to act as he pleases. Evil persons have to act evilly in spite of their willingness to be good, but that does not mean they can never be good. Even if evil persons are very willing to be good, they should not expect that by one or two good actions they can be free from evil. If they continue for long to do good actions and stay away from evil company and evil thoughts which stimulate evil actions, they will certainly grow good habits which in time will crowd out evil habits. A murderer, when detected, may be executed by human law, but he may go free if he is undetected. But according to cosmic law, a murderer stores up murder tendencies in his brain. A murderer is not punished by being murdered by some other individual according to the vengeance of cosmic law, as many suppose. The divine law does not work according to the tit-for-tat policy. The divine law does not work according to the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth policy. A murderer, instead, stores up murder tendencies within himself, and from the very time he commits murder he begins to punish himself continuously through conscience, in terror and for failure to act according to the law. Do unto others as you would they should do unto you. Punishment by conscience. A murderer knows that he would not want to be murdered and caused physical pain and the mental terrors of non-existence. So, when he commits murder and goes scot-free, he is haunted with the thought of having acted against his conscience, committing a deed which he is unwilling to have happened to himself. This murder tendency remains within the murderer as a murder habit and the terror of being murdered himself. If the murderer does not free himself, by meditation and God contact, or satisfy his conscience by giving himself up unto the law, then if he goes scot-free in one incarnation, in his next incarnation he will find that he is carrying within himself the bomb of a murder tendency. Under the influence of the fire of anger, his mental bomb of the murder tendency might explode into another sudden action of committing murder, wherein he, in turn, might be murdered by his opponent. It should be understood here that the cosmic law in this case does not murder the murderer through another individual, but the murderer, by his own evil actions, attracts murder unto himself. And he said unto her, Thy sins are forgiven. Luke 7:48. Jesus realized through the drawing or receptive power of the woman that cosmic energy went out of him and entered into the body of the sinful woman, healing her sinful habit-saturated brain cells. In the above sentence, Thy sins are forgiven, Jesus emphasized that God's energy passing through him had been the principal factor in the healing of the woman. Jesus emphasized the seed of healing of the divine power, which is the first essential factor in the healing of an individual's physical ailment. Seed and soil. In his next saying, Thy faith hath saved thee, Jesus emphasized the soil of conviction in the unlimited power of divine healing, which is the second factor required in the healing of physical ailments by divine power. Just as a plant grows after the seed has been sown in the properly tilled soil, so the divine plant of healing sprouts forth when the proper seed of divine power of God is sown by a master on the soil of a devotee's true faith. And they that sat at meat with him began to say within themselves, Who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, Thy faith hath saved thee, go in peace. Luke 7:49-50. Those that sat at meat with Jesus wondered who Jesus could be, that he could forgive the sins of an individual. No doubt the people wondered about the power of Jesus, for he was one with God and could do all wonders sanctioned by the divine will. Sin-paralyzed will. O woman, thy conviction in the unlimited power of divine healing charged your sin-paralyzed will with divine will, causing a release of energy lodged up in the brain and which, reinforced with the cosmic energy from me, has burned out the sinful habits lodged in your brain cells. Now, released from the automatic reaction and compulsion of evil habits and sense slavery, you can be conscious of the revived peace of your soul. In this sentence, Thy sins are forgiven, is emphasized the divine power and the power of Jesus, which roused the omnipresent divine will to send the healing cosmic energy to the brain cells of the sinful woman. And thy faith hath saved thee, emphasizes the release of the latent healing life energy in the brain cells of the sinful woman due to the revival of her sin-paralyzed will in response to the divine will of Jesus and God. What is blasphemy against the Holy Ghost? Can an evil man be a healer? And it came to pass afterward, that he went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God, and the 12 were with him. And certain women, which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna the wife of Chusa, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others, which ministered unto him of their substance. Luke 8:1-3. Then was brought unto him one possessed with a devil, blind, and dumb, and he healed him, insomuch that the blind and dumb both spake and saw. And all the people were amazed, and said, Is not this the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, This fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub the prince of the devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts. Matthew 12:22-25. Jesus, having already attained God consciousness, not theological degrees, and having converted his consciousness into the consciousness of God in order to avoid any selfish thought, went to cities and villages preaching about the ever new joyous state which one can attain by meditation in the kingdom of God, that is, in the state of cosmic consciousness. Many women were healed who were possessed of evil spirits. Women who are emotional very easily attract disembodied tramp souls roaming in the ether trying to possess the bodies of absent-minded souls. Mary Magdalene was relieved of 7 devils, that is, 7 tramp souls who possessed her body at different times. Accusations of priests. There was one possessed with a devil and who was blind and dumb. Jesus healed him also. All the people were amazed and said, Is this the son of David? Or in other words, does Jesus belong to a human family? When the Pharisees and the scribes came down from Jerusalem and heard about the wonderful healings performed by Jesus, they accused him of casting out devils or evil spirits by the help of Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. As there are various kinds of angels in the astral world due to their different kinds of self-realization attained during their earth existence, so, in the after-death state in the astral world, there are various kinds of evil souls who departed from this earth. There are petty evil spirits and powerful evil spirits among evil souls. But when souls attain their complete oneness with God, they are all equal. There are no higher or lower liberated souls in God. All are equally omnipotent. Jesus, in order to answer the accusation of the Pharisees, spoke in parables. Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand, and if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. But if I cast out devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God is come unto you. Matthew 12:25-28. How can Satan, the cosmic evil, cast out the satanic souls whom he controlled and who were carrying out his nefarious wishes in the cosmos? If the rulers in a kingdom are divided in their activities and ideals and act contradictory, they cannot carry on their rule. It is Satan who, working on the evil karmas of individuals, sends bacteria and messengers of disease to infect them. How could Jesus use the same satanic or Beelzebub force to destroy Satan-produced diseases? This view is untenable and unreasonable. God is the source only of good. It is similarly untenable that God, the source of all good and who is nothing but good, could send, in any way no matter what the offense, disease and suffering to human beings. Therefore, all evil is the creation of Satan and not God. Good health, reason, self-control, peace, desire to meditate, every thought of welfare for the body, mind and soul come from God. And every physical, mental or spiritual ailment which infects the body of man comes from Satan. Satan is trying to torture people by evil and God is trying to redeem people by good. The life of Jesus demonstrated that truth, for, when he was cursed and abused by evil people, he did not use his divine force to destroy them. Instead, he used his love and infinite divine compassion to say, Father, Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus said that every city or house, whether it is good or evil, cannot exist if its members are divided in their aims. If there are some in the house who want to be evil and others who want to be good, there are bound to be clashes and mental collisions. So Jesus said that if the Pharisees accused him of healing by Beelzebub, they were wrong, for the evil force certainly does not want an individual to be free from the miseries perpetrated by evil spirits. Similarly, if a good or bad group of people want to retain their individuality, they cannot act against their own aims. Jesus goes on to say, if you accuse me of casting out devils by Beelzebub, then the same thing must be true of other healers. Those members belonging to your community who have healed others and cast devils must have done so by the same power as I have. Therefore, in accusing me of casting out devils by Beelzebub, you are also accusing the divine, childlike wise people of your community of having cast out devils by Beelzebub. When they hear this accusation, they will certainly condemn you that you maintain that devils are cast out and sickness healed by the power of Beelzebub. But if I cast out evil, disembodied souls by awakening the invisible all-flowing spiritual presence of God, then those so healed will feel in their consciousness not only release from evil spirits but the presence of the Almighty Cosmic Consciousness. Great Law of Unity. Jesus saying that every city or house divided against itself cannot stand is a great law which should govern all successful households, cities, religious organizations, nations and races of people. When there is division in the family or country, there is trouble, disharmony and disintegration. Harmony should be the breath of life governing all religious organizations and countries. Or else how can one enter into a strong man's house, and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man? And then he will spoil his house. He that is not with me is against me, and he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. Wherefore I say unto you, all manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men, but the blasphemy against the Holy Ghost shall not be forgiven unto men. Matthew 12:29-31. Jesus said, or else how can I enter into the strong organization of Satan in the cosmos and destroy his evil works in nature and wicked influence in men unless I bind Satan by my wisdom? It is because I can consciously behold Satan and use my will against him that I am able to cast out the evil spirits which possess souls. But I could not cast out Satan's agencies by the power of Satan. Satan or Beelzebub, not being with me, is against me, and I could not use his power against himself. All souls that are not in harmony with me act against my laws and suffer. Every soul who does not know how to gather wisdom by contacting me in meditation scatters his concentration in the body and remains distracted, suffering from restlessness. He who has interiorized his consciousness by meditation gathers wisdom and bliss with the help of my Christ consciousness within his soul. But he who is not identified with me within his consciousness scatters it in the flesh and sense pleasures and is full of disquiet and trouble. That is why I declare the truth unto you all, that all kinds of errors, physical, mental and moral, belonging to those that are identified with their bodies will be forgiven, and whatever other errors they do to work unknowingly against God shall be forgiven. But those souls who have consciously felt the holy cosmic vibration of Om in meditation and deliberately ignore it or ridicule it as a physical sound, the effects resulting from their errors will not be forgiven. Blasphemy against the Holy Ghost. When a soul contacts the holy vibration, as St. John heard this voice or sound like a trumpet, and feels the ever-new joy in it and then deliberately reverts to an inharmonious life, he has to suffer the consequences of his actions in the form of a corroding inner restlessness and state of mental destruction. No one can commit any blasphemy against the Holy Ghost who does not know it first as the cosmic sound heard in meditation. If, After listening to this cosmic sound, one deliberately leads an inharmonious life, he cannot be saved from reaping the result of his bad karma. A person ignoring the intuitional guidance of this cosmic sound in meditation has to work out his own karma of an inharmonious life and distracted mind. All kinds of physical and mental errors can be dispelled or their fruition modified with the help of great souls, but no one can remove the restlessness of a distracted devotee who blasphemes against this perception of cosmic vibration and bliss. By deliberate deeper acts of meditation he must remove his restlessness in order to regain his bliss consciousness and vibratory contact of God or Holy Ghost. It is clearly evident that all kinds of errors performed by individuals can be more or less destroyed by their own efforts and the blessings of great masters, but no master can give a soul the contact of cosmic vibration and joy of meditation unless he forsakes his restlessness by his own effort of will. This is what is meant by blasphemy against the Holy Ghost not being forgiven. Those that blaspheme against seeking the vibratory contact of God cannot be forgiven by anybody else but must make their own effort to regain the contact of Holy Spirit by deep meditation. And whosoever speaketh a word against the Son of Man it shall be forgiven him. But whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world, neither in the world to come. Matthew 12:32. Jesus said, "And whosoever uses wrong language against any son of man or any individual with a body, including me with my body, will find forgiveness from God and the masters if he seeks it and is repentant." But anyone who contacts the cosmic vibration and at the same time thinks or talks evil and vibrates evilly in contradiction to the good and harmonious vibration of the Holy Ghost or cosmic vibration or meditation suffers from restlessness in this world and in his next incarnation. If he keeps on doing it he would form the habit of mental restlessness so deep in the soul that he would feel that he was eternally condemned to be restless and to be denied the ever-new blessed contact of holy vibration in the soul. The power of peace, be still. Now it came to pass on a certain day, that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, Let us go over unto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed he fell asleep, and there came down a storm of wind on the lake, and they were filled with water, and were in jeopardy. And they came to him, and awoke him, saying, Master, Master, we perish. Then he arose, and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said unto them, Where is your faith? And they being afraid wondered, saying one to another, What manner of man is this? For he commandeth even the winds and water, and they obey him. Luke 8:22-25. Jesus, although apparently asleep, inwardly was one with God. The center of an individual's consciousness is in the conscious mind during wakefulness, the subconscious mind during sleep, and in superconsciousness during deep meditation. When an individual is concentrated in the state of wakefulness, his subconsciousness and superconsciousness remain in the background. When he is asleep, his consciousness and superconsciousness remain in the background. But a master like Jesus, whose center of consciousness is cosmic consciousness, no matter whether his body is awake or asleep, is always awake in spirit, able to watch his body sleeping, or working in the state of wakefulness, even as God watches all human beings equally whether they are asleep or awake. That is why Jesus had said, Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 farthings, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Matthew 12:6. Present in all space. As God's consciousness is omnipresent, he knows life and death, sleep and wakefulness, of all creatures present in him, even as we know all our thoughts within our one mind. Even as a human being with his one life is conscious of the sensations of his body or of pain that may occur in any of the 27,000 billion cells of his body, so God's consciousness, being consciously present in all space, knows everything that happens even in any one of the tiniest atoms among all the countless creations in the cosmos. Jesus questioned his disciples' faith because they did not realize that, even though he was asleep, his consciousness was one with the Father and was awake in the storm, in the boat, in the disciples and in everything. If the disciples had had faith in the omnipresent consciousness of Jesus, they would have known his inner consciousness would protect them even though his body apparently slept. So Jesus said, "Why are you afraid through ignorance, and have not faith in the all-protecting omnipresent power and consciousness within me?" With the sanction of the divine will to prove his omnipresent consciousness and power of God within him, Jesus rose and commanded the forces of nature, winds and water, and addressed the sea, "O ye boisterous sea and wind which are governed by cosmic forces and who are created and are active according to the will of the omnipresent God, the Father with whom I am one, I command you to change your vibration and be peaceful and quiet. Peace, be still." As soon as Jesus, with his omnipresent consciousness and the omnipresent will of God within him, vibrated peace, the God-guided forces of nature immediately followed his example. It seems to ordinary persons that the wind and ocean are working by blind forces without any plan. But it is evident that the harmony in nature, the routine of seasons and the mathematics of planetary order reveal an intelligent law and cosmic plan of God which governs them. The unthinking person ascribes the law and order in this world to chance and nature, but the divine man who consciously perceives God in everything knows that everything, all planetary and stellar systems, are governed by the will of God. Hence, Jesus, being a master, not through imagination but by self-realization being one with spirit, had godlike powers. Even as God controls the elements of nature, Jesus, being one with him, could control the wind and the storm. A miracle of my master which I witnessed. I had the blessing of witnessing the controlling of nature by my great master, Swami Sri Yukteswarji. Once in Puri during a very hot summer day, when there was not the slightest prospect of rain or clouds, I had to participate in one of my master's religious processions. So I went to him and remonstrated that it was almost impossible to lead the procession on the hot sands with bare feet in the city streets. The master replied, "I will tell you a secret. Tell no one now. The Lord will send a cloud and drops of rain will cool the sand that you all may have the procession. So long as you will hold the procession, God will keep the umbrella of clouds over your heads and sprinkle little drops of rain to keep your feet cool." To our group's great astonishment, we noticed that as soon as we started with the religious procession, the entire sky was filled with clouds as if by magic, and very light rain fell, cooling off the sands in the city streets. As long as the religious procession of the Master paraded in the streets, the clouds and comforting rain continued, but as soon as the procession came back to the hermitage, the sky burned with the oriental sun, the sands scorched with the extreme heat, and the clouds and rain passed away as if they had not been. The Master remarked, "Did you see how God works for us? He works for all and responds to all, but few consciously realize when God consciously responds to their prayers. God is not partial to a few devotees but responds to all if they would have faith in him. Human children ought to have implicit faith in the omnipresent power and kindness of their one cosmic Father." How Jesus healed. The life force alone which heals. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him, and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stanched. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied, Peter and they that were with him said, Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And Jesus said, Somebody hath touched me, for I perceived that virtue is gone out of me. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said unto her, Daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith hath made thee whole, go in peace. Luke 8:43-48. Jesus, being conscious of his inner consciousness and of the astral world and the life force in all bodies, knew that this woman, by her willpower, through her hands contacting the hem of his garment, had taken out some life force from his body into her body, which like an X-ray had burned out the disease afflicting her. As a diseased person has to touch the electrodes in order to be benefited by the current issuing from an electrical apparatus, so the woman desiring magnetic healing made a contact with the body of Jesus and reinforced her body with the subtle aura or astral current emanating from his body and surrounding it. In every diseased human body, medicine or mental healing only rouses the inert life force to effect the healing. A sick person can rouse his healing life force by his willpower revived by the strong will of a healer, or the sick person may by faith draw the life force from a magnetic individual's body and thereby rouse and reinforce his own all-healing life force to effect the healing of a sickness. That is why Jesus said, Some subtle faith has touched my astral emanation by an astral hand and has withdrawn virtue or life force from me for healing purposes. When Jesus said, Virtue is gone out of me, he emphasized the seed of healing power that went out of him. When he said, Thy faith hath made thee whole, he emphasized the soil of healing. Both are necessary for the growing of the plant of healing. In the healing of the woman, Jesus is teaching to healers they must be sure of two factors in divine healing: the faith of the person desiring to be healed and the ability of the divine healer, who must know how to charge himself with divine healing power by daily deep God contact in meditation. A seed does not grow on a stone but on good ground, so the virtue or the seed of life force which went out of Jesus, being absorbed on the proper soil or faith of the woman, produced healing in her. It should be here noted that Jesus, in his own home country, with all his power, failed to heal the sickness of some people who were too material to be filled with the consciousness of God. 3 kinds of disease. In order to understand the divine law of healing as used by Jesus, one should acquaint himself with the science of the healing of all diseases. A disease consists of an inharmonious condition producing pain or unhappiness immediately or remotely in a living creature. Human beings are affected with 3 kinds of diseases which affect the body, mind and soul. The body is affected by bacteria, accidents, wounds and organic troubles. The mind of man is affected by mental bacteria of fear, anger, greed, insatiable sensuality, selfishness, jealousy and morbid tendencies producing mental discomforts and agonies. The soul diseases are produced by ignorance and cosmic delusion, by which a man forgets his perfect divine nature and concentrates on his imperfect human nature. There are various ways of healing the above 3 kinds of diseases. The way to destroy delusion is to meditate deeper and deeper until one has ecstatic contact of the ever-new bliss God. Ignorance can be destroyed not only by meditation but by reading true scriptures with intuitional understanding and by association with God-contacting saints. Devotion, good actions of helping oneself and others to be free from physical, mental and soul suffering, introspective discrimination of religious truths, and moral living are the bludgeons that slay delusion. Church-going or good company only shows that a person is interested in spiritual things, but unless he actually associates with those who contact God and who can teach the technique of God contact, one can never be liberated. One should never become hidebound in a dogmatic teaching, but should find out the greatest teaching which gives self-realization and become loyally engrossed in it. To try several paths until one finds the best spiritual path is the only way. But having found the best path and being sure it is the best path, one should loyally keep traversing it until he reaches the highest God consciousness. One should never be satisfied with dogmatic teaching or just the spiritual assurance of others. Unless one knows that he contacts God, he must keep seeking Him until he contacts Him. All psychological diseases can be destroyed by self-analysis, attentive introspection, and by association with mentally healthy people and by trying to live their example. Concentration and meditation destroy mental diseases and corroding bad mental habits. In meditation the mind becomes interiorized and withdraws the life force from the muscles and nerves and concentrates them in the brain cells where the evil mental habits are grooved. This concentrated life energy in meditation burns out the grooves of mental habits which are lodged in the brain. The needle of attention. Attention is the needle that forms the grooves of mental good or bad habits. It is by deep attention to an evil experience or good experience that a bad or good habit is formed in the brain. These good or bad habits remain in the brain like good and bad records of human experience. As ordinary phonographic records can be played by a needle, so the good and bad records in the brain grooves can be played and brought forth by the needles of attention. That is, whenever attention is given to good or bad habits, they manifest themselves in mental and muscular activity. Willpower and autosuggestion from others can also destroy mental bad habits. Willpower can concentrate energy in the brain grooves with healing results. Autosuggestion is useful when a man's will is paralyzed by the experience of continued mental disease, then he can reinforce his own willpower by the suggestion of another strong will that he be healed. Autosuggestion, which is used in most forms of healing, can revive the disease-paralyzed will and send energy into the brain, effecting the removal of the destructive habit lodged in the brain cells. Mental bad habits can be destroyed by associating with those that have good mental habits. The timid should associate with the brave, the sensual with those possessing self-control, the restless with those that have meditative habits. Exercise of willpower and staying away from the bad company that feed the specific bad mental habit can destroy it. As good doctors can handle chronic diseases, good mental healers can help one by autosuggestion or transmission of energy by will through the ether. Only crystal souls can send divine energy by willpower to invade the brain of the psychologically diseased individual, and by the divine energy can burn out the bad mental habits in his brain. The cause of disease. It must be remembered that spiritual ignorance is the real cause of mental and physical disease. If one removes ignorance from the soul by meditation and God contact, he has automatically removed mental and physical disease from his body. That is what Jesus meant when he said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, destroy delusion, and all else, healing of the body, mind and soul, will be added unto you, will be given to you without your making special effort to achieve them." Psychological diseases give birth to physical diseases. In fact, most physical diseases derive their roots in the mind through disease convictions. If for 50 years you have been enjoying health, you think you can never be sick, but if you suddenly find yourself physically ill, you think at first you will get well, but if your physical disease stays for 6 months, you become convinced that you will never get well. It is a great psychological error to feel this way, for you should use and constantly visualize the conviction of 50 years of healthful experience and health consciousness to dislodge this 6 months old conviction of disease. All diseases can be treated in 2 ways: by physical methods and by mental methods. The physical method of treating disease consists of fasting or rejuvenating the life force. In fasting the will reverts to the spirit and brings energy from it, reinforcing the energy in the body which stimulates physical healing. Physical healing is also possible by use of chemicals and vitamins in fresh herbs which produce healing by eliminating poisons and destroying bacteria in the human blood. In fasting one should be guided by expert advice as to the method and length of time of the fast. Use of medicine and food. As herbs cannot be had during all seasons, extracts from them came into use. Medicines also have some healing power, just as poisons have power to destroy the body. Those who disbelieve in medicine and its effects on the human system should prove by using poison that it has no effect on their system. Any fanatical mental healer who says medicine has no effect ought to drink poison and prove its ineffectiveness on his own system. Strong iodine heals wounds, but when taken internally in sufficient quantity may kill a person. Such healers should abandon food as well as medicine, for whoever eats food uses the medicinal or health-giving properties of the food. But while I speak of the power of medicine derived from God, I must say that medicine has not that power of healing possessed by the mind if one knows how to use that power. Those who constantly live by medicine weaken their minds and they have to live by medicine, just as some people I have known cannot live without periodic operations. Ultraviolet rays. Better than medical healing is the healing by the ultraviolet rays in the sun or ultraviolet lamps and the knowledge of their proper use. As ocean bathing is healing, so sun bathing is extremely important, effecting all kinds of healings. Healing by rays is very useful, as the rays can change the atomic disorder of cells in chronic diseases. Spinal adjustments and massages are effective and sometimes better than the treatment by ordinary rays, for the adjustment of the spine releases obstructed life force which can bring about a quicker and surer healing of physical diseases than anything else. Treatment of cases of pneumonia have been treated very efficiently by good osteopaths and chiropractors. Yoga exercises also help adjustment of spinal vertebrae, which releases the pressure on the spinal nerves and brings about the normal flow of life force in the nervous system, which also brings about healing of many diseases. Preceptor methods of exercise directly awaken the all-healing life force and teach one the quickest methods of healing disease. The above are the different methods of healing by physical methods which more or less stimulate the life force and effect the healing. Operations in certain cases are necessary but should be avoided as much as possible. Operations may remove diseased tissue and prevent it from affecting healthy tissue. But people should depend more on the all-healing power of the mind, and not on artificial means such as operations. The mental healer. Healing of physical diseases is made possible by stimulating the will, imagination, emotion, or reason in the physically ailing patient. The mental healer must be a student of deep psychology so that he can detect the nature of the patient, and must be a person of great concentration who can exercise his own will, imagination, emotion or reason on his patients. The advanced mental healer must treat patients according to their nature, stimulating will in the strong-willed patients, stimulating imagination in imaginative ones and so forth. A true story is told, that during a fire when everybody shouted fire, a dumb man living in the home shouted fire, fire with the rest of the people and received back the lost power of speech through the shock and excitement. However, it should be remembered that will, emotion and reason have no healing power of themselves. They only stimulate the partially inactive life force in the physically sick individual which burns the disease-making bacteria. Most mental healers use autosuggestion and reason to stimulate the imagination and will in their patients. As mentioned before, the will and imagination of the healer stimulates the will and imagination of the patient. The roused will and imagination in the patient in turn awakens his partially inactive life force, which in turn burns the disease-making bacteria and brings about healing. Absent healing, Absent healing is based on autosuggestion. Autosuggestion is based on rousing the latent imagination to release the healing life force in the patient. Instantaneous mental healings are caused when the healer and the person to be healed are perfectly tuned to each other. If the healer has a strong will and imagination and the person to be healed has faith in the healer's ability to awaken his will or imagination, then the patient will be healed through his own awakened life force. The time element in healing arises when either the healer is deficient in his healing power or the person to be healed is not properly receptive to the healer's healing vibrations. Jesus and great savants healed by sending cosmic energy into the brain of the diseased patient. The divine energy sent by a master unites with the partially inactive brain energy of the patient, and their combination burns away disease bacteria or disease habits or habits of ignorance lodged in the brain almost instantaneously. The last mentioned divine way was the method that Jesus the Christ used to heal possessed souls or the lame or the blind. Only masters, if they have divine permission, can by divine will force use the cosmic energy to materialize into new body parts in the affected individual. Therefore, when Jesus healed, he felt virtue is gone out of me. That is, the conscious cosmic energy which he always felt within himself went out of him to effect the healing. Also, whenever Jesus said, "Thy faith hath made thee whole," he emphasized that no matter how great the seed of healing power a healer possessed, he has to have the necessary soil of faith of the patient in order to produce the desired healing. "Thy faith hath made thee whole" signifies, thy mental receptivity in my healing power has made it possible to produce the desired healing. Doubt is the static which disturbs the reception of the vibration of healing from a great healer. A diseased individual must tune his soul, radio-like, with faith and proper mental attitude in order to receive the broadcastings of absent or direct healing vibrations from the healer. Different types of healing. Lastly, it must remember that all methods of mental or physical healing should be administered to people according to their mental inclinations and mental habits. Jesus said, "Pay unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar," that is, those that believe in medical healing, let them go to the medical healers, and those that believe in healing by the methods of osteopath and chiropractor, let them use such methods, and those that believe in healing by rays, let them go to those who practice healing by electricity and so forth, and those that believe in mental healers, let them go to the mental healers, and those that believe in the unlimited power of healing of the masters and God, let them go to the masters and God. All healers have limited power of healing. Only God has unlimited power of healing. So, if one by deep devotion and meditation constantly tunes himself with God and with unflinching faith goes on asking the Father's help in spite of the invasion of undesirable doubts, he will certainly find the desired result. But often those that are not in tune with God can find quicker healing by being in tune with those souls and masters who are already in tune with God. As devotees and masters give all their devotion to God, so also God in turn gives unlimited power to his true devotees and masters for healing of body, mind, and soul. The masters specially emphasize the healing of the soul from all ignorance. Devotees who want to be healed of ignorance should continuously and uninterruptedly believe in their gurus or true God-sent spirited preceptors. God sends the guru. During the period of philosophical curiosity, God sends the seeking individual ordinary teachers or brings about the study of some soul-awakening spiritual books. But when an individual is soul-bent to know God, he sends an enlightened soul or guru to teach the seeking devotee. Then God himself uses the intelligence, self-realization and teachings of the enlightened soul or guru to teach the seeking devotee. The seeking devotee must always be loyal to such a guru, the God-sent messenger, throughout life and through incarnations, if necessary, until he finds redemption. A person who learns from an ordinary teacher is called a student, and a person who learns from a guru is called a disciple, Keela. A disciple who faithfully learns and lives in life the teachings of a God-sent guru preceptor will attract the same guru throughout incarnations, if necessary, until liberation is attained. That is how Jesus attracted to himself the guru of his former incarnation, Elijah or Elias, in the form of the reincarnated John the Baptist. It should be emphasized again that one should never ignore any mode of healing which more or less operates according to divine law. But one must distinctly remember it is better to use mental power than physical methods of healing, and it is best by faith and meditation to call into operation the unfailing, unlimited divine healing power for healing not only the body and mind but the soul. Great gurus, by their willpower, can transmit cosmic energy into the brain of the disciples, burning out habits of ignorance of many incarnations which hound the devotee. Again it must be remembered, seek ye the method of healing soul ignorance first, and the healing of the body, mind and inner being will be automatically added unto you without any specific effort. Jesus' methods of healing. When Jesus healed the man who was possessed, he did it by two ways. First, his consciousness being in tune with the Christ intelligence in all creation, he used the Christ will which governed all astral forces and entities, to compel the unclean spirit to leave the brain of the possessed individual. Second, he used his willpower to scent the cosmic energy in the brain of the possessed individual and destroy the habits of being possessed by the unclean spirit. Now by the revelation of the science of various forms of healing we know how Jesus Christ worked his method of healing. Jesus used only the divine power of healing, and he gave all the credit of his healings to God, as Jesus within himself did not feel the I am or ego consciousness, which is born of the identification of the soul with the physical body. Even when Jesus said, I say unto you, arise, or become healed, he meant not the ego or I am consciousness within him but the unlimited God consciousness in which his soul had become united. Unless the soul forgets I am or ego consciousness born of the body, by intuitional meditation and interiorization of consciousness, it cannot be one with the Spirit. When Jesus said, I and my Father are one, he did not mean by the I the consciousness in connection with the body, but he meant the consciousness of his mind which was born in connection with his soul, the true and perfect image of Spirit. Every devotee has to forget his physical ego consciousness and concentrate on his soul before he can be united to the Spirit. So Jesus meant, I, all who by meditation have attained their soul consciousness, and my Father, and the cosmic consciousnesses I have felt through my soul consciousness, are one, are inseparable. When an ordinary person says, I will do this, he refers to his I am or ego consciousness born of the identification with the body. The ordinary person knows that he is body and hardly feels his soul, but when Jesus referred to the I within him, he always meant the soul consciousness united with the God consciousness which he felt within himself. Needs of sinners. And it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? But when Jesus heard that, he said unto them, They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. But go ye and learn what that meaneth, I will have mercy, and not sacrifice, for I am not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Matthew 9:10-13. Those that are physically well do not need a doctor, but the sick in body need the aid of a doctor. The same holds true in spiritual things. I love to dine with the sinners and publicans because they, being mentally, morally and spiritually sick, need divine healing through the godly life manifesting through me. Jesus meant that only highly evolved souls like himself could cure soul sickness of others. That is why he associated with sinners and publicans and not only with religious or intellectual people. There is a tendency in many churches to attract nicely dressed, rich people. One often hears in churches remarks like this: "We had a well-dressed, nice-looking crowd this morning." The real divine minister should teach spiritually advanced people more advancement and spiritually sick people the art of spiritual healing. Jesus associated with his disciples to make them more advanced and kept company with sinners so that he could heal their soul sickness. Jesus goes on to say, "But go and learn what it means to attend to spiritually sick people and not to cater to spiritually healthy people. I will have compassion and mercy by which I will try to heal spiritually sick people from their soul maladies, and I will not let them be sacrificed on the altar of their destiny or karma. I will use mercy and compassion to save them and not forsake them. I am here not to call only those that already are redeemed but specially all kinds of sinners from all walks of life who in their worldly wisdom and ignorant conceptions of life remain identified with the body and suffer from agonies and worries, not seeing their mistakes and thus not repenting that they might enjoy the everlasting bliss contact of God in meditation. How Jesus raised the dead. How to retain consciousness in the after-death state. And, behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue, and he fell down at Jesus' feet, and besought him that he would come into his house, for he had one only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she lay a-dying. Luke 8:41-42. There cometh one from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, Thy daughter is dead, trouble not the master. But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. And when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in, save Peter, and James, and John, and the father and the maiden. And all wept, and bewailed her, but he said, Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth. Luke 8:49-52. Jesus said, Do not fill your soul with the fear of hopelessness, but believe in the all-powerful divine will within me, and your daughter shall come back to life. Due to the serious condition of the maiden, Jesus did not want his mind to be disturbed by the presence of inharmonious people, so he asked only his advanced disciples, Peter, James and John, to follow him. To those weeping and wailing, he said, Why are you making such a fuss and weeping? Although your physical eyes behold the maid as dead, still I can see she is only sleeping in God and can be brought back alive through his will. And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. And he put them all out, and took her by the hand, and called, saying, Maid, arise. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway, and he commanded to give her meat. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them that they should tell no man what was done. Luke 8:53-56. Jesus freed himself from all vibrations of doubt by sending all the doubting Thomases away from his environment. Then Jesus, with his body and right hand filled with dynamic cosmic energy, took the dead damsel by the hand and vibrated his life-giving power within her, saying, Damsel, by the God consciousness and cosmic vibration which are equally present within me and your dead body, I vibrate and will with my cosmic will that you be conscious of this life-giving cosmic energy and forsake your deathly sleep and wake up. Raising the dead. Jesus, being aware of the Christ intelligence which governs all astral forces and disembodied souls, commanded by his universal will the disembodied soul of the damsel to re-enter her body, which was already charged by life force sent by Jesus through cosmic energy. The 12-year-old damsel was instantly healed and arose, to her parents' astonishment. Jesus, realizing the secrecy and seriousness of divine healing of the dead, asked those present not to discuss the matter with others. He asked that the girl be given something to eat. Saints, after ecstasy, always like to drink water in order to revive the consciousness of the body. So Jesus wanted the girl to eat so that she could remember and feel her body again after her soul's return into the body from the astral world. Awakening the physically dead and awakening the spiritually dead by giving God consciousness are considered two of the greatest forms of healing performed by the Great Master. Greater than healing the physically dead is the changing of a soul who is materially minded into a God-minded soul. Great Masters can transmit God consciousness into advanced disciples by a special technique of will and divine permission. And when Jesus departed thence, 2 blind men followed him, crying, and saying, Thou Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he was come into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus saith unto them, Believe ye that I am able to do this? They said unto him, Yea, Lord. Then touched he their eyes, saying, According to your faith be it unto you. And their eyes were opened. And Jesus straitly charged them, saying, See that no man know it. But they, when they were departed, spread abroad his fame in all that country. Matthew 9:27-31. The cosmic energy sent by Jesus into the eyes of the blind men, being an intelligent and all-powerful and all-creative force, rearranged the lifetrons, electrons and protons which had been deranged in the diseased eyes of the blind men, and brought about the required healing. After they had received the healing, Jesus said, Be careful that no materially minded men hear about your healing, for such men, no matter what spiritual demonstrations they behold, love to disbelieve in the almighty power of God. Possession. As they went out, behold, they brought to him a dumb man possessed with a devil. And when the devil was cast out, the dumb spake, and the multitudes marveled, saying, It was never so seen in Israel. But the Pharisees said, He casteth out devils through the prince of the devils. Matthew 9:32-34. There is nothing mysterious about devils or disembodied souls except that people have not studied their characteristics. Many scientific secrets which formerly lay hidden in nature are now commonplace matters. So, someday when people will be more spiritually advanced, they will understand all about the mysteries of life and death and the souls that have gone into the unknown. When the devotee, by constant practice of meditation, can transfer his will and attention from the conscious to the subconscious, and when he can go deeper and send his concentration consciously beyond the portals of the subconscious, and from superconsciousness felt within his body can project his consciousness on the light of Christ intelligence hidden beyond the state of wakefulness, dreams, subconsciousness and superconsciousness, he can then behold a vast inner universe of luminous vibratory planets and vibratory spheres peopled with various qualities of disembodied souls possessing various earthly karmas. Astral nightmares. As a man may sleep 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours or 12 hours or may have sleeping sickness, so many souls after death remain in the state of unconscious sleep for a little while or a long time, according to their karmas in earthly life. As restless and excitable souls often experience nightmares during sleep, so also those souls that led a confused and wicked life in their earthly existence, find themselves, after death, suffering from astral nightmares. Souls with good karma alone are able to be awake in the astral land after their sleep of death. Most souls, after sleeping this sleep of unconscious death, wake up in the womb of a childbearing mother. Sometimes good souls who have practiced many virtues are transferred to enjoy the results of their good karmas in astral planets where most of the limitations of earth life are non-existent. Only souls that by meditation can control their hearts and remain engrossed in the constant ecstasy with God consciousness during their lifetime can retain their consciousness during the time of death and also in the astral world. It is easy to understand that a soul who, like St. Paul, by the bliss and contact of Christ consciousness, could rise above the body and daily experience the state of death when the soul goes out of the body and contacts Christ consciousness, would be able to retain his consciousness after death. In other words, he who practices retaining his consciousness by daily meditation will certainly retain his consciousness when death comes upon him and in the after-death state. The testimony of the devotee who can retain his consciousness in the after-death state declares the mystery of the astral experience. As the worms live in the earth, fish live in the water, men live on earth, birds live in the air and angels live in the fine airless vibratory regions, so also there are various atmospheres and vibratory regions in the astral universe where different kinds of souls, according to their merits and demerits of their pre-astral existence in earth life, occupy the different vibratory spheres. Astralocuted. Just as fish cannot live in the air for long, so tramp souls must remain in gross vibratory astral planets, whereas the finer souls live in the finely vibrating subtly luminous planets. If tramp souls dared to approach the luminous planets, they would find themselves shocked or electrocuted or astralocuted, that is, destroyed by high voltage of astral energy. The tramp souls of the astral world who live in dark regions may, by affinity and agony of their desire to be reborn, get hold of weak-minded earthly souls riddled with bad karma. Then these souls are spoken of as possessed of devils. Likewise, great souls can be possessed by divine saints. Just as a president of the United States cannot accept invitation anywhere unless the proper invitation is given to him, so also divine saints do not appear except when they are invited by their advanced devotees. Advanced devotees, by the urge of their devotion, with closed eyes can see or talk to saints in vision. When they develop further, they can see saints with open eyes, talk to them or touch them, even as the advanced disciples of Jesus were able by their devotion to see Jesus the Christ after his resurrection in flesh and also were able to touch him. So the idea of devils possessing souls must not be discarded as superstition. While one meditates on God, one must be absolutely convinced that his body is charged with a high voltage of cosmic energy emanating from the thought of God, and thus he is protected from the invasion of tramp souls in the astral world. The tramp souls who try to possess the bodies of divine souls become astralocuted or shocked and are driven back to the dark spheres of the astral world. Anyone with God consciousness should therefore never be afraid of the possibility of being possessed by evil spirits. What should modern churches offer their members? The vital need to replace sermons with bliss of God contact. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted, and were scattered abroad, as sheep having no shepherd. Matthew 9:35-36. It was wonderful how Jesus with his great divine power went about through the busy cities and villages teaching in their synagogues God's vibratory truth or gospel coming through himself. He took compassion on the multitude who had no spiritual leader. Then saith he unto his disciples, The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. Matthew 9:37-38. The harvest of cosmic consciousness is plenteous and endless, but there are very few devotees who will labor to sow the seeds of meditation in order to reap its harvest. Pray therefore that God the giver of cosmic consciousness may bless you to become true laboring devotees, and through His grace and your spiritual efforts you may attain the harvest of that cosmic consciousness. Abundant harvest. The harvest of God realization is abundant as it offers eternal wisdom, eternal ever-new bliss, eternal consciousness and immortality. But there are very few human beings who will live a life of discipline and continuous meditation so that they may reap the eternal harvest of God contact in the short season of life. God realization comes to the devotee not only due to his efforts of self-realization but also because of His divine compassion. The devotee who with pride by reason of his spiritual realizations demands of God to surrender himself finds many difficulties in reaching his ultimate spiritual goal even though he attains miraculous powers. Neither does a devotee receive divine mercy if he only blindly believes in God and deliberately breaks all spiritual laws as laid down by God's true children, the prophets. That is why God is the Lord who grants the final harvests of all spirituality grown by the devotees on the soil of their meditative life. Each devotee should regularly practice all the step-by-step methods of higher realization and at the same time with deepest devotion pray unto his own Father God to grant him final liberation. Pray unto God who can grant salvation to give His blessing that you may become divine laborers tilling the soil of your consciousness with meditation and sowing in it the seeds of wisdom and self-realization, that in the end you may reap the richest harvest of all sorrow-liberating God contact. God can be attained not by proxy, blind beliefs nor sudden unmerited divine visitation nor by dying, but by spiritual labor of scientific meditation and divine grace. Transfer of spiritual power. And when He had called unto Him His 12 disciples, He gave them power against unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Matthew 10:1. As wealthy people can transfer their funds during their lifetime or after they are gone to anyone they choose, so also great prophets of self-realization can by certain techniques transfer their spiritual ecstasies, God wisdom and healing power unto their true disciples at any time. That is how Jesus called His 12 disciples and transmitted into them spiritual powers and divine authority over disembodied souls to cast them out when they sinfully blasphemed by possessing human beings. Jesus also instilled in His disciples the power to heal all kinds of diseases. Free will of Judas. At this point it must be remembered that Jesus also gave His divine power to Judas, but Judas used his free will to ignore his spirituality and stoop to evil ways. Even though Jesus gave to His disciples an equal measure of divine power, the disciples according to their various degrees of spirituality and good and bad karma received and manifested His teachings differently. Disciples like Street John were completely liberated during the lifetime of Jesus, but Judas had to work out his evil karma of his betrayal of Jesus through many incarnations. Certain great masters in India state that Judas has been working out his sins for 20 centuries and was liberated only in the present time, the 20th century. The bad karma of Judas was very great because he sinned and blasphemed against Jesus, who contacted the holy vibration or the Holy Ghost and God the Father, cosmic consciousness, within him. Jesus did not send out His disciples with theological degrees but equipped them with power born of God contact to preach the gospel or God vibration as felt in meditation through the example of their spiritual lives. How modern churches should be organized. The Christian churches have done much good in keeping alive the thought of Jesus, but they have failed to give God contact to their church members. This is due to the fact that ministers and leaders who guide church members are chosen according to their physical personality, oratorical power, organizing ability or theological degrees, and not according to the quality of their self-realization. Jesus and his disciples did not have any theological degrees or college education, nor did they take lessons in elocution, but they preached what they knew from direct God contact. Jesus said, "We speak that we do know, and testify that we have seen." John 3:11. The leaders of modern Christian churches, in order to be loyal to Christ and God, must change their methods of holding people by hackneyed repetition and revamping of the same sermon every Sunday, by social gatherings, movies, bazaars and dances, and must try to keep the people together in the church, if they want to keep together, by the spontaneous loyalty born of their self-realization garnered in the school of discipline and meditation taught by the church. The Sunday morning service must not consist of various motions of the body and mind required in chanting and singing, standing up and sitting down, prayer, church recital, and so forth. It should consist mostly of meditation, cessation of bodily motions, absence of mental restlessness and presence of God contact. Where bodily motions cease and mental thoughts dissolve, God begins to appear as stillness and divine bliss on the altar of peace and changelessness. Feeding sermons. That is why Jesus complained that most people were satisfied to join the services in the synagogue, but there were few laborers who deserved to reap the harvest of eternal abundant spirituality. As most modern churches are satisfied to create the big, costly church organizations to feed sermons to the not spiritually hungry church members once a week on Sunday mornings, so the church paraphernalia has become a top-heavy, scantily useful organization. All spiritual teachers, instead of first concentrating on the building of big churches with heavy mortgages, should establish the temples of self-realization in the soul of their followers. Besides, all ministers and leaders of spiritual teachings should teach only after they have attained some degree of God contact by deep regular meditation. Ministers of churches should be selected according to their devotion to God and self-realization through meditation. As in the West the churches have become places of Sunday sermons, similarly the big Hindu temples in India have become places of occasional chanting and ceremonial worship. God communion. Big temples at first were occupied by great teachers, but after their passing people with ambition for power and money seized the temples and desecrated them with their unspiritual methods. Now the great teachers, usually due to the monopoly of the priests, have left the temples and live in sequestered nooks and temples where they preach self-realization to selected students, not by preaching all the time but by meditating with them on God contact. Sermons only create the desire to know God, but meditation with great saints gives one the knowledge and bliss emanating from God communion. God contacting ministers are real need of churches. What is necessary now is not new denominations but the real teaching of Christ and the living of the teachings of Christ, improving the quality of church members by meditation and the selection of God-known, God-contacting ministers. All church unity can be abolished and real Christianity be brought back in the church if the churches are made places for daily meditation including Sundays. The atmosphere of meditation will change churches from nests of delusive, diving church unity into the heaven of Christ consciousness or Christianity. That is why Jesus endowed the disciples with divine power so that they in turn could instill that power in the people and heal them from ignorance. Jesus also taught them the art of developing dynamic willpower and healing by which they could heal the afflicted bodies of people who wanted to be spiritual but could not be so due to their physical defects. Be ye wise as serpents, and harmless as doves. Jesus spoke of the serpent or kundalini spinal power, and third or spiritual eye, symbolized by a dove. And into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And when ye come into an house, salute it. And if the house be worthy, let your peace be upon it, but if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when ye depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment, than for that city. Matthew 10:11-15. And into whatever city or town you go, find out who are spiritual and worthy to receive your message of salvation. There abide with such people, accepting their hospitality as your spiritual wage, until you have taught them enough and are ready to go elsewhere to help others. On visiting another family, salute it humbly as the manifestation of God. If the family is spiritually deserving, then make it feel your soul's peace. But if you find that family unspiritual and unappreciative of your gift of peace, then withdraw it to your own soul. And whosoever will not receive your message of divine liberty, nor listen to your words of wisdom, then depart you from that house or city, shake off the dust of their evil vibrations. This will be a proof of their evil natures before their own conscience. Verily I say unto you that the law of karma will punish that city or home who refused your soul-liberating message even more than Sodom and Gomorrah suffered due to the effects of their own misdeeds. Transferring God consciousness. It has been explained before that great teachers can transfer their God consciousness and peace to worthy disciples just as rich man can transfer his wealth to anyone. The disciples of Jesus, having the power to transmit peace to God-seeking people, were advised in the following way: O ye beloved disciples, transmit peace into worthy souls in spiritual homes and places. But if you go to a place and find the people spiritually unworthy, retain your peace within you and leave. Even though I ask you to live by the charity of the people in a house, in no way forget to retain the consciousness that you are spiritual lions, divine children made in the image of God. That is why if any house that will not appreciate your exemplary spiritual lives or profit by the words of your wisdom, then go away from that place, not in anger, but firmly declaring the folly of the ignorant people who could have had salvation through you but failed to receive it due to their extreme unfriendliness and unreceptivity. The actions of those that treat you with unfriendliness will be recorded by the cosmic law and thus attract evil karma. Verily I say unto you that the judgment of the cosmic law against the ignorant evildoers of Sodom and Gomorrah would be less severe than the judgment of that law against those spiritual offenders who blaspheme against God by not recognizing you who are the highest representatives of Christ intelligence and God. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents, and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. Matthew 10:16-18. Behold, wherever you go, my consciousness must be manifest in you, and you must consider yourselves always humble, inoffensive, unrevengeful, like a meek lamb, even when you are surrounded by ruthless, conscienceless people like ravenous wolves. In order to deal with satanic, wolfish people and sense temptations, you must always abide within your great wisdom and calmness born of the divine realization which you received by awakening your serpent force or coiled divine energy, and in the peace which you have acquired by concentrating in your peace-producing, dove-like, three-colored spiritual eye. Inner meaning of serpent. What Jesus meant when he spoke of being wise as serpents and harmless as doves is not generally understood. Ordinary serpents have no wisdom, are quick to anger, and are stupid enough to bite people and get killed. Doves are not harmless, for they kill and eat insects. Even though the dove might be used as a symbol of peace for its peaceful looks, the serpent certainly does not look wise or inspiring. Jesus used these words in a symbolic, esoteric sense, since he was talking to his advanced disciples. The Oriental scriptures have used the simile of a serpent to illustrate the coiled force or the force that passes through a coiled passage at the base of the spine. The astral force which passes through the coiled serpentine passage at the coccyx from the senses to the brain with the help of some high technique of self-realization, is termed the awakened Kundalini or awakened coiled force. Kundalini force cannot be accidentally awakened. Many people think that this Kundalini force can be easily awakened or roused by accident. They are the ones who mistakenly speak of the Kundalini awakening or divine awakening as being dangerous. In the state of sleep, the energy and consciousness in the human body retire from the muscles and sensory nerves and senses to the region of the heart, spine, and brain. In deep ecstasy, the devotee knows how to consciously withdraw life force from the coccyx and heart and to race it through the coiled passage at the base of the spine and through the spinal plexuses and brain, upwardly reversing their direction, toward God. In the ordinary body-identified individual, the life force and consciousness continuously flow downward through the coiled passage at the base of the spine, so that he is conscious only of the body and its sense pleasures. Any great saint of any religion who has attained God consciousness knows how to withdraw his consciousness and life force from the sense regions in the spinal cord passage and the plexuses in the spine to God consciousness in the brain and the eternal space surrounding the body. Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. Moses is spoken of as lifting up the serpent in the wilderness, that is, by deep meditation. He lifted his consciousness and life force through the coiled passages at the base of the spine to unite them with God consciousness in the brain, in the wilderness or deep silence born of meditation. Awakening the Kundalini force is extremely difficult and cannot be done accidentally. One who is able to awaken the Kundalini fast approaches the state of Christhood. Many ignorant teachers think awakening the Kundalini force is identical with awakening sex consciousness, an extremely ridiculous and erroneous conception. Jesus knew that most of his disciples had awakened their consciousness by rousing the Kundalini or coiled serpent-like force, and therefore he asked his advanced disciples to retain their deep wisdom and calmness which they had acquired by the Kundalini awakening, whenever they were confronted with persecution. Warned against revenge. Anyone who has awakened this coiled force, that is, has taken his consciousness through the coiled passage at the coccyx to the brain, has acquired miraculous power, and by the powerful awakened energy in his brain and will power, can destroy his enemies or conquer all temptations. That is why Jesus warned his disciples not to use divine power to wreak revenge on enemies, but to use the celestial power of love to conquer them. Jesus elsewhere demonstrated this conviction when his enemies arrested him to bring him before Caiaphas, and Jesus would not use his spiritual powers against them, though he plainly said, "Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels?" Matthew 26:53. Jesus later, when crucified and suffering on the cross, performed the greatest spiritual miracle of his life by saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23:34. Demonstrates love silently. No matter how much a person is evil or acts against divine laws, God never uses his miraculous powers to destroy him. The evil person destroys himself by his own sins. God is love, and he demonstrates love by silence. By silently loving the wrongdoer, he calls him back to the divine home. God with all his almighty power never uses physical force to conquer evil. He uses love and wisdom to defeat evil in the world. All those Christ-like souls who love him know that they should never use divine power to destroy God's erroneous children, but should use his love to win them. To use divine power for evil purposes is blasphemy and conducive to great spiritual downfall. That is why Jesus asked his disciples to use the most harmless and strongest peace force by awakening the spiritual eye by meditation to conquer all other so-called strong forces of evil. When anybody concentrates at the point between the eyebrows with eyes closed, he sees a light which has a white star in the middle, encased within a sphere of blue light which is encircled by a golden ring of light. When the light switch in an automobile is turned on, it sends light through one wire into two wires which illumines two headlights of the automobile. Similarly, the medulla oblongata sends life force through two optical nerves into the two physical eyes. The single spiritual eye. Jesus said, "If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." He meant that any devotee who knows how to focus his inward gaze at the point between the eyebrows finds that the light traveling through the two eyes and optic nerves becomes centralized into a single visible spiritual eye at the point between the eyebrows. By higher meditation the devotee knows how to penetrate his consciousness and life force through the telescopic spiritual eye of three colors into eternal space. Any devotee who can focus his eyes and is able to behold this spiritual eye and is able to enter it finds his physical body and his body of the universe filled with cosmic light and the light of wisdom. The Christmas shepherds followed a spiritual star. When the shepherds saw a star intimating to them the birth of Christ, they beheld through their spiritual eye the star of wisdom where Christ consciousness was manifested in the body of Jesus. Every devotee must know how to take his wisdom through the star of the east or the rising star of wisdom which he beholds in front of him in meditation, to the Christ consciousness lying behind it. Those spiritual teachers who have gone beyond their human consciousness into Christ consciousness by penetrating through the spiritual eye have tremendous powers and can perform many divine miracles. So Jesus warned his disciples, who had found infinite peace by penetrating their consciousness through the spiritual eye or the dove of light, that they should not misuse their spiritual powers when they were confronted by the wickedness of mistaken children of God. The three colors of the spiritual eye compared to a dove. The spiritual eye has been compared to a dove because of its three colors. The mouth of the dove is compared to the white star in the middle of the spiritual eye, and the two other colors blue and gold in the spiritual eye have been compared to the two wings of the dove. All Christ-like souls aspiring to attain the kingdom of God must behave divinely and conquer evil only by soul force even as God does. Evil cannot be conquered by the evil use of divine power. It would be easy for devotees who have acquired miraculous power to try to conquer their enemies by the evil use of divine force. So Jesus warns his disciples of the danger of losing hard-acquired divine force, if one uses it to wreak vengeance against his own divine brethren working under the influence of the intoxication of delusion. Evil cannot conquer evil. Now we understand what Jesus meant when he commanded his disciples, "Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." Jesus further prophesied as to persecutions his disciples would meet at the hands of uncomprehending men. That is why Jesus said, "My children, beware of materially minded men who will deliver you up the judges and get you whipped in the synagogues for preaching the gospel of divine freedom. Ye shall be taken to task before governors and kings for living my truth and preaching it. The Gentiles and the political forces who oppose you for living the truth and preaching my message will be condemned before the tribunal of cosmic law. Their evil treatment will remain as testimonials which will act against them during the judgment delivered by cosmic law." Beholding our cosmic body. An ordinary man, consciously identified with his own body, uses his eyes and feeling to see himself limited by his body, family, society, country, world, and a certain portion of space. But when he meditates and penetrates his consciousness through his spiritual eye, he beholds himself in all space, and all living creatures as different forms of his own self. In that state, With his body and mind as the central states of consciousness, he beholds all living beings as the limbs of his vast cosmic body. Such a devotee who has awakened his serpent force has taken away the searchlight of his consciousness from a limited part of matter and sensations in one body and has expanded his consciousness to light up all space and has an actual perception of the sensations of all living beings. Such a devotee, by awakening his serpent force, or reversing the searchlight of his senses through his body to God, becomes identified with eternal wisdom and is not at all disturbed by trials and temptations. Such a devotee who beholds through his spiritual eye his existence in all, who feels an ineffable peace and attunement with all living creatures and things, and who beholds all selves as manifestations of his own being, becomes harmless to all, equally loving all different parts of his own cosmic body. This attainment is what Jesus meant when he asked his disciples to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. How one should act under persecution. Intuition, not ego, should be man's guide. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in the same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. Matthew 10:19-22. When they arrest you, do not use your calculating limited human reason, but let God speak through your intuition and voice. Let not your human ego speak, but let the wisdom of your Father speak through your inner surrender to Him. Even a human brother will persecute a spiritual brother who will follow truth. You will be hated by all materially minded people for following the Christ intelligence within you. But he that withstands persecution for the truth to the end of life will be saved from reincarnation of the misery-making earth life. In the above words, Jesus is outlining how God-guided people should act when confronted with persecution. In business matters and lawsuits, people definitely plan their activities and their words in all transactions, but Jesus points out that souls who are in tune with cosmic consciousness are guided by it in their senses, thoughts, feelings, intelligence and intuitions. Guided by higher wisdom. Hence, God-tuned souls in all their activities should be guided by the higher wisdom and all-seeing intelligence instead of depending on the preparedness of limited reason. Cosmic consciousness does not reason with devotees, it only drops truths in their intuitions. The devotees use their intuitions to guide their reason and speech and actions. Intuition is not born in reason but is the father of reason and can satisfy all the demands of reason. Human reason is based on sense experience and is limited by it. If the sense experience is misinterpreted, the human reason proves to be erroneous. A person beholding a cloud of dust on a hill from a distance might be led to think that the hill is on fire emanating a cloud of smoke. This shows how reason, which is dependent on sense experience, can blunder if sensory experience or observation is faulty or incomplete. On the other hand, even as God knows the truth about all things through His omnipresent intuition, so His devotees also know everything through their developed intuition. God has no eyes, nor senses, nor reason dependent on the senses through which He knows. He is the knower, the process of knowing, and the wisdom to be known. Hence He knows everything through His intuition or feeling present in everything. Jesus urges His disciples to depend on the unlimited power and guidance of intuitive God perception and not on their limited reason when they are confronted with persecutions or human problems. So He said, "O my dear ones, when for the sake of preaching my all-emancipating truth you are delivered before the governors, do not plan how or what you will speak in defense of your truth and yourself, for God and cosmic vibration will speak through your voice and reason, being present with you, instantaneously in the same hour in which you will be required to speak.